The first thing my son's teacher said after closing the classroom door was, "Your boy asked if I was the girl in your yearbook." I laughed because that was what people do when the floor moves under them and they're too proud to grab the wall. Then Elise Warren placed my old high school yearbook on a tiny first grade reading table between us, and I stopped laughing. I'm Ben Mercer, 34 years old, museum exhibit technician, widower, father to an 8-year-old boy named Theo, who believed privacy was just a word adults used when they were hiding snacks. That morning, I'd packed his lunch, signed his spelling quiz, and somehow missed the fact that he'd smuggled a 20-year-old yearbook into his backpack. "I'm sorry," I said, staring at the cracked blue cover. "He found it in the hall closet last night. We were looking for his rain boots." Elise stood on the other side of the table with her arms folded over a moss-green cardigan, her coat still buttoned like she hadn't decided whether to stay in her own room. She wore the same small enamel planet pin on her collar that Theo had been talking about for weeks. "Miss Warren has Saturn on her shirt. Ms. Warren says Jupiter is basically a failed star. Ms. Warren doesn't like glitter because it's classroom confetti with legal immunity. I had met her at curriculum night. Parent conferences, pickup lines, always polite, always careful. Pretty in a way that didn't announce itself, dark blonde hair twisted up with a pencil through it, clear gray eyes, a mouth that looked like it had learned restraint the hard way. And until that moment, I had done a very good job pretending I didn't know exactly who she was." Elise opened the yearbook with 2 fingers and turned to a page marked by a folded permission slip. Astronomy Club, 2008. There we were, a row of teenagers in hoodies standing under the old-school planetarium dome. Me with bad hair and a grin too big for my face. Mara Nolan beside me, laughing at something off-camera, her hand caught halfway to my sleeve. And on Mara's other side stood Elise Warren. Younger, quieter, wearing that same Saturn pin. My late wife's best friend. For a second, the classroom disappeared. The alphabet rug, the baskets of glue sticks, the paper planets hanging from fishing line, all of it blurred behind the picture of a girl I had married and buried. And another girl I had not allowed myself to remember too clearly. Elise tapped the photo once. Theo pointed to me during quiet reading and asked, very loudly, if I was the girl in Dad's book who had the space badge. "That sounds like him?" He also asked if I knew his mom. My throat tightened. Of course he had. Mara had been gone 3 years, long enough for people to stop lowering their voices when they said her name, not long enough for me to stop expecting her coffee mug to be in the sink. "I didn't know he brought it," I said. "I believe you." That should have helped. It didn't. Because Les wasn't angry. Anger would have been simple. She looked unsettled, like Theo had not just brought in a yearbook, but opened a door both of us had been standing on opposite sides of, pretending it was a wall. Before I could say anything useful, the classroom door cracked open. Theo's face appeared in the gap, all freckles, serious eyes, and complete disregard for tension. "Ms. Warren, Mr. Paul said I could get my water bottle." Elise's expression softened immediately. "It's by the sink." Theo slipped inside, saw me, and brightened. "Dad, did you know Miss Warren was in your space club?" "I'm learning that now." He grabbed his water bottle, then wandered to the small telescope near the windows. "Is this real?" "Very real," Elise said. "Can it see aliens?" "Only if they submit the proper paperwork." Theo nodded, accepting that as reasonable. Then he looked back at the yearbook. "Mom is in there too." The room went quiet in a different way. I crouched beside him. "Yeah, buddy, she is." "Ms. Warren knew her?" Elise answered before I could protect anyone from anything. "Yes," she said gently. "Your mom was my friend." Theo studied her pin. "Did she like planets too?" "She liked making fun of people who took planets too seriously." That got him. He grinned. "Dad does that." "I've noticed," Elise said. And there it was. A small, dangerous warmth between us. Not grief. Not exactly memory. Something alive enough to make both of us look away. A minute later, Theo was sent back to after-school care with his bottle, and a promise that he could help test the telescope for Friday's stargazing fundraiser. The door closed behind him. I reached for the yearbook. Elise's eyes dropped to my hand, just for a second. But I saw it. The way she watched my fingers touch the page, like she remembered them doing something they shouldn't have. I should have said something when the semester started, I told her. Yes, she said. That one word landed harder than an accusation. I wasn't sure if you recognized me. I recognized you, Ben. Hearing my name in her voice made the years fold in half. She closed the yearbook and held it against her chest. I waited because I wanted to see whether you would choose to acknowledge me or whether you needed me to stay safely in the category of your son's teacher. And what did you decide? Elise looked at the old photograph one last time, then back at me. I decided your son is braver than both of us. By Friday afternoon, I had convinced myself the private meeting had been survivable. Then the school telescope refused to move. It's jammed at the mount, Elise said, standing beside me on the blacktop behind the gym, while PTA volunteers unfolded tables and children ran in bright, useless circles. I thought you said you worked with museum equipment. I work with priceless artifacts, I said, crouching beside the tripod. This was assembled by a committee and stored next to dodgeballs. Careful, that telescope has tenure. I looked up. She was smiling. Not much, just enough to make me forget the wrench in my hand. The school stargazing fundraiser had been Mara's kind of event. Badly organized, overambitious, full of parents who brought homemade brownies and opinions. 3 telescopes were set up around the track. Elise had printed constellation maps. I had been drafted as the space dad, which sounded heroic until I realized it meant untangling extension cords. Theo hovered near us with a clipboard he had made himself. I'm assistant telescope captain, he announced. You're assistant line monitor, Elise corrected. That's less science. That is painfully true. I loosened a knob, adjusted the mount, and began explaining the altitude control like I had an audience at the museum. Elise listened for 10 seconds before saying, If they turn that screw while holding the tube, they'll strip it. I paused. She pointed. That one. Your instructions are confident but wrong. Confident but wrong was my high school brand. I remember. The words slipped out lightly, but they left a charge behind them. We both bent over the telescope at the same time. Her sleeve brushed my wrist. Neither of us moved quickly enough. By sunset, the blacktop had filled with families carrying blankets and travel mugs. Elise moved from group to group with calm authority, her Saturn pin catching the last light. I adjusted lenses, lifted smaller kids so they could reach the eyepiece, and tried not to notice how often Elise and I ended up shoulder to shoulder. Jupiter, she told a line of second graders. You're looking for the bright dot with 4 smaller dots near it. A boy squinted into the telescope. It looks fake. So do most important things at first, she said. I glanced at her. She glanced back. What? Nothing. That was not a nothing face. That was my impressed face. You should label it. It resembles indigestion. I laughed and she laughed too, and for one clean second there was no yearbook, no cemetery, no careful distance. Just a woman under a darkening sky making me feel younger than I had any right to feel. Then one of the parents, a cheerful man in a fleece vest, handed us 2 cups of cider and said, You two make a good team. Are you together? Elise answered instantly. No. Not sharp, not embarrassed, just precise. The man flushed. Sorry, I just meant, We know what you meant, she said, and rescued him with a small smile. Ben is Theo's father, I'm Theo's teacher. Tonight we are unpaid labor. He laughed and moved on. I should have been grateful for the correction. I was. Mostly. But some small, foolish part of me had wanted to hear what silence would feel like. Elise waited until the crowd thinned and the PTA began packing away cookie trays before she said, You looked disappointed. I tightened the cap on an eyepiece. That obvious? To me. I leaned against the table, suddenly tired. I don't know what I looked. That's not an answer. No, I said. It probably isn't. Across the blacktop, Theo was showing my father-in-law how to use the star wheel backward. Frank Nolan listened with the solemn patience of a man who had once raised Mara, and therefore feared nothing. Elise followed my gaze. Frank still picks him up on Fridays? When he can. He says it's to help me, but really he likes being told facts by someone under 4 feet tall. Frank lifted Theo's backpack in one hand and the little portable telescope in the other. He caught my eye, nodded toward the parking lot, and mouthed, Pancakes tomorrow? I gave him a thumbs up. Theo shouted, Dad! Grandpa says I can sleep over if I bring the moon map. Brush your teeth twice, I called. That's not how teeth work. Frank guided him away without offering me one dramatic look, one meaningful smile, one widower must move on speech. Bless the man. When they were gone, the schoolyard felt too quiet. Elise wrapped a cord around her elbow. There's a diner 2 blocks over with terrible coffee and excellent pie. I looked at her. This is not a parent conference, she added, and it is not me coming to your house for coffee. Something in the way she said that snagged at me, but she was already stacking clipboards. I could eat pie, I said. I assumed. You repaired one telescope and accepted applause from children. Men require pastry after that. The diner was nearly empty. We took a booth by the window, ordered cherry pie, and spent the first 5 minutes talking about the fundraiser because that was safer than anything else. Then Mara's name came up, not dramatically. It slipped in through the side door as it always did. She would have mocked the constellation handouts, I said. Elise's fork stilled. I realized what I'd done a beat too late. Not mentioned Mara. That wasn't the wound. The wound was the way I'd said it, as if Elise's presence existed mainly to help me remember my wife. I'm sorry, I said. Elise looked out the window at the streetlights. People did that in school too. Did what? Stood me beside Mara and then looked through me. I didn't answer. She turned back. Her voice was level, but there was nothing casual in it now. I loved her. I need you to understand that first. I do. She was bright in a way people trusted. Loud without being cruel, brave in public. I was quieter, so everyone assumed I didn't mind being the shadow. My chest tightened. Elise? No, let me finish. She set down her fork. I will talk about Mara. I will remember her with you when that is honest. But I am not spending another chapter of my life standing next to her while everyone looks at her. Especially not you. The diner hummed around us. For the first time since she'd closed that classroom door, I understood that the danger between us wasn't only that I might betray Mara, it was that I might ask Elise to disappear again and call it love. So I said the only true thing I had. I see you. Her eyes held mine, wary and wanting. Then keep doing it, she said. It has to be a habit. Elise texted me first, not about Theo, not about homework or the fundraiser or a permission slip. There's an adults-only meteor program at the planetarium Saturday. No glitter, minimal children. Moderate chance of freeze-dried ice cream. Interested? I read it 3 times before answering. Interested? Then, because I was trying to become a man who said what he meant, I added, in the program. And you. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Good. Wear something that doesn't suggest you came to repair the projector. Frank took Theo overnight without asking questions. He simply accepted the backpack, handed me a container of soup, and said, "Don't rush home unless something's on fire." At the planetarium, Elise was waiting under the blue marquee in a black coat and red scarf, her hair loose around her shoulders. No cardigan, no classroom keys. The Saturn pin was still there, fixed near her collar like a small, stubborn planet. You look nice, I said. I look like a woman who owns one date scarf. So this is a date? She looked straight at me. If you need the label, yes. The honesty of it nearly knocked me sideways. Inside, beneath the dim lobby lights, we made a rule before buying tickets. No using Mara as a shield, Elise said. I nodded. No turning every story into grief. No pretending grief isn't in the room. Fair. And no discussing my lesson plans. That was my entire strategy. Then develop a personality quickly. So we talked about other things. Her first apartment over a laundromat that made all her clothes smell like warm pennies. My job rebuilding a dinosaur exhibit while 6 donors argued over whether feathers were too political. The worst songs we had loved in high school, her hatred of cilantro. My secret belief that oatmeal cookies were lying about being dessert. Under the planetarium dome, the lights lowered until the room became all hush and manufactured sky. The narrator spoke about debris trails and atmosphere, and the brief, bright violence of meteors burning themselves visible. Elise's hand rested on the armrest between us. Halfway through the simulated shower, her fingers moved first. not by accident, not because of crowding. She reached for me. I looked at her in the dark. She kept her eyes on the artificial sky, but her hand opened. I took it. Her palm was warm, her grip steady. I felt 16, 34, widowed, alive, all of it at once. Too much and not enough. Outside afterward, the marquee painted her face blue. The November air had teeth. We stood near the curb while couples drifted around us toward restaurants and parking lots. I had a good time, I said, instantly hating how small it sounded. Elise smiled. That was almost brave. I'm working up to reckless. Reckless would be inaccurate. This has been considered to death. That may be the least romantic thing anyone has ever said before a kiss. Her eyes dropped to my mouth. Then stop reviewing it, she said. She stepped in and kissed me. There was nothing borrowed about it. That was the first thought that hit me. Not Mara, not memory. Elise. Her gloved hand at my coat sleeve, the faint taste of peppermint. The quiet sound she made when I kissed her back and stopped being careful for one full, dangerous minute. When we parted, she didn't look dreamy. Elise Warren looked like a woman checking whether the bridge she had chosen to step onto would hold. Still see me? She asked. Yes. Good. I drove her home first, then she insisted on following me to my place because I had left a box of fundraiser supplies in her trunk. That was how we ended up on my porch at nearly 11, laughing too softly while I fumbled my keys. A porch light flicked on next door. Mrs. Larkin, my neighbor, appeared in a robe with a mug in her hand and the surveillance instincts of a lighthouse keeper. Ben, is that you? Yes, sorry if we woke you. Her gaze moved to Elise. Recognition brightened her face in the worst possible way. Oh my goodness. You're Mara's friend, aren't you? From the service. Emily? Elise, she said. Elise, yes, how nice. Ben, isn't that nice? Mara would be so glad you two kept in touch. I felt Elise go still beside me, and I, idiot, coward, man still learning where the ground was, said, Yeah, it's good to see an old friend. An old friend. The words dropped between us like a dead thing. Mrs. Larkin smiled, satisfied by the harmlessness she had been handed, and went inside. Elise stepped back from my door. Elise? No, don't fix it on the porch. I panicked. I know. I didn't want her turning it into gossip. That isn't what hurt. I knew before she said it. She looked past me at the dark kitchen window. After Mara's funeral, I came here 3 times. Brought food, washed dishes, held Theo while he slept because you couldn't put him down without shaking. My breath caught. The last time, you were standing right there. She pointed through the window. By the sink. You grabbed my hand and said, Please don't leave me, Mara. The porch tilted. I don't remember that, I whispered. I do. Shame rose so fast I could barely speak. I'm sorry. You were grieving, I know that. Her voice was direct, almost gentle, which made it worse. But I was grieving too, and I already wanted you more than I could justify. So I stopped coming inside. All these years I had thought she'd vanished because grief made people uncomfortable, because our connection belonged to Mara and died with her. You weren't abandoning me, I said. No, I was refusing to take intimacy that wasn't being offered to me. The night went very quiet. I wanted to reach for her. I didn't. At last she touched the strap of her purse and gave one short nod, as if confirming a hard decision to herself. I can want you, she said. I do want you, but I will not be a substitute your grief recognizes before your heart does. Then she left me on the porch with my keys in my hand, the memory I didn't have, and the kiss I could still feel like heat. For 2 weeks after the porch, Elise and I became experts in professional distance. She sent notes about Theo's reading level. I replied with complete sentences and no emotional risks. At pickup, she smiled at him and nodded at me with the exact warmth of a bank teller verifying a deposit. It was deserved. That didn't make it easy. Then Theo came home with a construction paper assignment titled My Family Constellation. He had drawn me as a large crooked star, himself as a smaller one attached by silver marker, and Mara above us in yellow, labeled Mom Star in careful block letters. Beside me, he had added another blue star, Ms. Warren. My stomach dropped. Buddy, I said, keeping my voice even, why did you put Miss Warren there? He shrugged, eating crackers over the table like a small barn animal. She knows the sky stuff, and she's not dead, so she goes on the ground side. There was no philosophy in it, no matchmaking, just Theo sorting the universe with crayons. The next afternoon, Elise asked me to stay back. She handed me the project in a folder. I asked Mr. Valdez to grade this one. I heard rejection first. Not caution, not professionalism. Rejection. You didn't have to make it a federal case, I said. Her face closed by one quiet inch. I didn't. I mean, he's 8. He draws dinosaurs eating the mailman. And I am his teacher, she said, which is exactly why I cannot grade a project where he places me inside his family structure. The words were calm, correct, infuriatingly correct. I rubbed both hands over my face. I'm sorry. Are you? Yes, I looked at the folder. For 1 second, it felt like you were erasing yourself before anything even happened. Elise's eyes softened, but she didn't step closer. Ben, I am trying not to let anything happen in the wrong order. That landed because she had been the one brave enough to name what I kept trying to blur. That night, I sat on Theo's bed while he organized glow-in-the-dark planets on his ceiling. Mrs. Warren talked to me about your constellation project, I said. Was it wrong? I made Jupiter too small. Jupiter has survived worse. No, buddy, it wasn't wrong. But Mrs. Warren is your teacher. She helps you at school. She isn't being asked to be part of our family. Theo frowned. But you like her. I swallowed. I do. Like how Grandpa likes meatloaf. Different category. Like kissing category. I stared at the ceiling. You are very direct. You said no lying except about surprise parties. Then yes, I said carefully. I like her in a grown-up dating way, but that does not make her your mom. You already have a mom, and no one replaces her. Theo was quiet for a while, then he said, Can Ms. Warren still show me how to find Mars? At school, yes, if she wants to. And if you kiss her, I don't have to call her anything weird. No weird names. Good. I'm not calling anybody bonus mom. Miles did that, and everyone laughed. I kissed his forehead. Noted. The next day, I texted Elise. I talked to Theo. No pressure on you, no family vacancy. I'm sorry I made your caution feel like rejection instead of respect. She replied an hour later. Thank you, I'm still annoyed, but less efficiently. A week after that, she agreed to meet me at the Riverside Food Truck Court. Neutral territory with picnic tables, terrible parking, and no kitchen full of ghosts. She arrived in jeans and a navy sweater, Saturn pin on the collar, hair pinned messily at the back of her neck. I had the sudden, painful thought that wanting someone could be both simple and complicated, without being less real. We ordered tacos from separate trucks because she said my choice smelled aggressively beige, then sat facing the river. I don't need you to help raise Theo, I said before I could lose my nerve. Elise unwrapped her food slowly. That is a strong opening statement. I mean, obviously, any person in my life has to be kind to him. But I don't want you because there's an empty chair at breakfast. She watched me. I want you because you correct me when I'm wrong and somehow make it attractive. Because you think oatmeal cookies are fraud. Because you kissed me like you decided the risk was worth it. And I have thought about it every day since. Her expression shifted. Not surrender. Relief, maybe. I'm not afraid of Theo, she said. I like Theo. I'm afraid of becoming useful before I'm loved. You won't. You can't promise that by wanting it. No, I said. But I can move slowly. I can be honest. I cannot invite you into roles you didn't choose. She took a bite, considered me over the foil. That was better than your porch performance. My porch performance is being retired permanently. Good. It was poorly reviewed. We laughed, and the knot in my chest loosened. After that, things changed by inches. A coffee after work. A walk through the sculpture garden where I did not mention Mara once and Elise did not reward me like a trained dog. A phone call that lasted 90 minutes because she wanted to know whether museum mannequins were creepy after dark. They are, I told her, but only the Victorian ones. In May, Elise asked to meet me in the school parking lot after dismissal. She looked composed, which I had learned usually meant she had already done the difficult part. I spoke with Principal Cho, she said. My heart kicked. About us? About the possibility of us. I disclosed that Theo's father and I have a personal relationship that will not proceed while I'm his classroom teacher. Dana appreciated the paperwork. She lives for paperwork. And? And the school year ends in 3 weeks? After that, Theo moves to summer program and then second grade. I won't be his direct teacher. I nodded, trying not to smile too fast. Elise failed not to smile at all. The observatory has a summer opening the Friday after the final day, she said. New public telescope. Bad speeches. Good sky. Are you asking me to volunteer? No. She stepped close enough that I could see the tiny chip in the enamel of her Saturn pin. I'm asking you to be my date. My real one. In public. After the line is clear. I looked at the woman who had refused to be a shadow, a substitute, or a convenience. Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. Good, Elise said. Try not to bring a wrench. The observatory looked smaller than I remembered, and more beautiful than it had any right to be. Maybe because the sky was clear. Maybe because the school year was finally over. Maybe because Elise was waiting near the entrance in a blue dress, Saturn pin at her shoulder, holding my old yearbook against her hip like a dare. You brought evidence, I said. I brought a primary source. That sounds serious. It is. There will also be bad speeches. The director was already at the podium, thanking donors beside the new telescope, while half the crowd shifted politely and the other half searched for snacks. Elise stood close enough that her arm brushed mine, and this time neither of us moved away. After the ribbon cutting, she led me to a bench beyond the main path, where the city lights thinned and the dome rose behind us. Then she opened the yearbook. Not to the Astronomy Club page at first, to the blank pages in the back. Tucked there was a new photograph. Elise and me at the stargazing fundraiser, caught by some parent's phone. I was bent over a telescope, laughing. She stood beside me, looking at me instead of the sky. My chest went tight. I printed it yesterday, she said. I considered putting it over the old one. I looked up fast. Her mouth curved, but her eyes were serious. I didn't. She turned back to the club photo, Mara laughing, teenage me grinning, young Elise standing beside her with that planet pin shining on her sweater. I don't want to cover this, Elise said. I don't want to compete with it either. I took the new picture from her hand and placed it carefully on the blank page. Then it goes here. She watched me. I loved Mara, I said. I still love what we had. I always will. But I am not asking you to live inside that photograph, Elise. I'm asking you to build a separate life with me. Beside it. Not under it. Not over it. Her eyes shone, though she blinked like she resented the inconvenience. Say the simple version, she said. I smiled because I knew her now. She didn't want poetry when the truth would do. I choose you. Elise took a pen from her purse, wrote the date beneath the new photograph, then added in her neat teacher handwriting, first page of our own. Then she kissed me under the observatory lights, and this time there was no porch, no neighbor, no borrowed name. Just her hand at my neck and my heart finally understanding the difference between remembering and reaching. That summer, we dated like adults who had learned caution the expensive way. Theo knew Elise was my girlfriend, not his new mother, not a replacement, not a constellation assignment come to life. We told him at the kitchen table after an early meteor watch date, while I burned toast and Elise rescued the eggs. Theo listened, absorbed it, and said, So can girlfriends make pancakes? Elise looked at me. Is this a test? Everything with him is a test. She made pancakes. Theo judged them almost grandpa level, which was basically a Michelin star. We made new traditions slowly. Saturday walks by the river, observatory nights. A rule that Elise did not help with homework unless Theo asked and she wanted to. A rule that Mara's name was allowed in every room, but not as a shadow Elise had to stand inside. Frank approved in the only way Frank approved anything. He started leaving extra pancake mix when Theo slept over and once handed Elise a better flashlight for stargazing without comment. By the following spring, there were more photographs in the back of the yearbook. Elise at the museum, pretending to be unimpressed by my exhibit lighting. Theo holding a moon rock replica with the reverence of a priest. The three of us at a food truck, Elise laughing because I had ordered something aggressively beige again. A year after that night at the observatory, I asked Elise to marry me in the backyard, beside the small telescope Theo had learned to focus himself. She said, "Yes, but if you call this destiny, I'm going inside." So I said, "It's a choice." She smiled. Correct answer. Later, Theo aimed the telescope at the moon while Elise leaned against my shoulder, her ring catching a little porch light, her Saturn pins still fixed near her collar. Inside the house, the old yearbook sat on the shelf. The Astronomy Club photo was still there. Mara laughing. Elise young and quiet. Me before I knew how much life could take. And behind it were the new pages, not covering the old ones, continuing them. So tell me, what would you have done if your child carried an old yearbook into class and exposed a feeling you were afraid to name? Have you ever loved someone new while still protecting the memory of someone you lost? Share your experience in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, please like and subscribe for more last maybes that become real choices.